Redemption is one of the major themes of Mob Psycho 100. Throughout the narrative, Mob encounters a cast of characters who do some seriously bad things. However, Mob shows compassion and forgiveness to these characters, and most of them are, in some way, redeemed by showing remorse for what they did and changing their behavior. While Mob shows almost endless compassion and forgiveness to those around him, he has never forgiven himself for hurting his brother Ritsu when they were children, even though this was an accident. Since then, he resolved to not use his powers against others, even in extreme circumstances. And when he does use his powers, it brings out a lot of guilt. During his fight with Dimple and 100% Rage, he says, "I'm terrible." And after his fight with Teru brings out the destructive triple question mark, Mob is devastated that he failed to change. These two scenes set up an important but often overlooked aspect of Mob's character. He kind of hates himself, or at least the part of himself with dangerous powers, a part that he tries to repress in an effort to become a better person. A lot of Mob's actions early in the first season further illustrate this point. For instance, he joins the Body Improvement Club over the Telepathy Club, a deliberate choice to distance himself from his powers and try to change himself. He admires his little brother Ritsu because Ritsu doesn't do weird stuff and has talents beyond psychic powers. Mob Psycho, at its core, is a story of Mob learning to forgive himself and to come to terms with his powers, his emotions, his darker side, his past mistakes. It's only after witnessing every other character's redemption arc that Mob is finally able to get his own. Before we really get into things, this video will cover the first 2 seasons of the anime in detail, and then at this timestamp, we will start getting into manga spoilers. The end of the manga is essential to how this theme wraps up, so if you haven't read it, please go and read it. I don't want this video to be the thing that spoils it for you. The theme of redemption is especially clear when it comes to the villains. In Mob Psycho, there's something I'm going to refer to as the villain disillusionment arc that is repeated a few times. Basically, villain believes that they are special and superior to other people. Mob wrecks them. Villain realizes that they are not special, and they start living a better life. What's interesting about this arc is that the villain's defeat isn't the end of their story. In most cases, it's just the beginning. This arc occurs with the very first villain, Dimple, an evil spirit who literally wants to become God. You can't get more of a superiority complex than that. Unlike a lot of the other villains, Dimple doesn't change immediately following his defeat. Instead, his development is gradual. We'll have to loop back around to him in the manga spoilers section of this video. There's not much more I can say here. The disillusionment arc occurs most dramatically with Hanazawa Teruki. Mob Psycho isn't shy about its themes, and Teru's arc highlights a few of the most important ones. Teru is threatened by Mob because Mob's existence rocks his entire worldview. He's not special. There's another person just like him, or actually more powerful than him, but who doesn't view his powers as making him special. After Teru is defeated, he accepts that he's just an average person. From this point on, Teru is one of the good guys, and he redeems himself by taking every opportunity to live by the better morals he learned from Mob. The disillusionment arc also occurs at the end of Season 1 with the members of Claw's 7th Division. This is an organization full of grown-up Terukis if they had never met Mob and went on with their lives believing themselves to be superior. Again, Mob wrecks them, this time by channeling his power through Reagan. Reagan tells the Scars, in no uncertain terms, that they are not special and that they need to grow up. The Scars end up defecting from Claw as a result and help foil the world domination plot during Season 2. Moving on to Season 2, Suzuki Toichiro is the final big example of the villain disillusionment arc. We'll have to save some of this for the manga spoiler section, but for now we can talk about that big fight. This fight perfectly highlights the contrast between Mob and Suzuki. Suzuki values individual power above anything else, but Mob values relationships and emotions, and he understands that everyone has their own strengths and weaknesses. When Mob goes 100% ecstasy, Suzuki remarks that they are similar and that they both enjoy using their powers. Following this, Mob sees Ritsu on the ground and remembers hurting him, which causes him to go into 100% shame. How could I? Even for just a brief moment, I let myself go. Throughout the rest of this fight, Mob's ability for compassion is highlighted. He feels sorry for Suzuki, recognizing that his life is empty and lonely, and he doesn't want to hurt him. In the end, Mob displays 100% kindness for his enemy, and stays with him in seemingly his final moments, sacrificing himself to absorb his power. It's not naivete that leads to Mob's compassion here, but rather an active choice that he makes to be a kind person, even to someone he hates. The theme of redemption is not only represented through the major villains. Most of the main cast has a redemption arc of some kind. Ritsu does some pretty bad things in Season 1 as he seemingly starts down his own villain origin path, but he learns from it and apologizes to Mob and to Onigawara. Sho is framed as an antagonist when he's introduced, and he makes some questionable choices, but Mob forgives him immediately upon learning his motivation. Serizawa is also first introduced as an antagonist. Mob shows compassion to him as well, albeit in a tough love kind of way. Serizawa takes responsibility for his past actions and redeems himself by standing up to Suzuki to save Reigen's life. I'm going to hold off until the manga spoilers section of this video to talk about Reigen. So for now, we'll talk about Mogami arc. This arc is hugely important for this theme because it highlights Mob's choice to be a compassionate and forgiving person. Mogami tries to convince Mob that the world is a fundamentally cruel place and that some people aren't worth saving. Mob rejects the idea that bad actions make a person irredeemable. If I can change, I'm sure anyone can. That's why there are no worthless people. He's not naive enough to believe that everyone is basically good. 6 months of torture have proven that that is not the case. But he needs to believe that people can change because he needs to believe in his own ability to change. At the end of this arc, Minori feels genuine remorse and apologizes to Mob, and Mob forgives her, despite the torment that she put him through. During the battle with Mogami, Mob realizes that his powers can be a positive thing, because he can use his powers to save other people. This is an important development for Mob. He has spent a long time repressing his powers in an attempt to redeem himself. As the narrative progresses, he uses his powers more and more often to help other people. It still isn't complete acceptance of his powers and is sort of another self-imposed punishment. He doesn't necessarily see himself as worthy of saving. He refuses to fight back to save himself, but he will use his powers when there's another person's life at stake. In comparison to many of the other villains, Mogami doesn't get as complete of a redemption arc. However, his reappearance in World Domination arc still highlights the ways that he and Mob have changed and learned from each other. Mogami tells Mob that you can't solve everything with kindness. But Mogami also shows mercy to Minagishi in this scene, showing that he may have learned something from Mob after all. Mob certainly takes Mogami's words to heart during the rest of this arc, but in the end, he still chooses to show kindness, not necessarily because it's the best course of action, but simply out of compassion. Okay, it's manga spoilers time. The resolution of Dimple's arc has been hanging since his character was first introduced, and it's wrapped up in Broccoli arc. Dimple has had the same goal all along, to become a god, and he invites Mob to join him in accomplishing his goal. When this happens, Mob is carried away and self-absorbed, so he's not his usual empathetic self. He doesn't understand Dimple's true motivations at first, so he asks him, "Why don't you stop doing bad things?" At the climax of this arc, during their confrontation, Dimple tries to use what he has learned about Mob against him, including Mob's personal baggage from the first time they met. But Mob doesn't fall for it. He's grown so much since the beginning of this story. He's no longer concerned about going with the flow, and he's able to use his emotions independently of his powers. Mob says, "If I want to talk to Dimple, power is nothing but an obstacle." All this time, Dimple has been gradually becoming a better person, or a spirit, but actively fighting this development. In this scene, he says to Mob in an extremely unconvincing way, "I'm a dangerous evil spirit." Mob sees through it and knows that Dimple is still a good person, despite his mistakes. He shows empathy to Dimple. "You just got a little carried away." Mob apologizes for not realizing earlier that Dimple wanted to include him in something that was important to him. Mob's compassion leads to Dimple's own realization. What he wanted all along was a friend, and he had that in Mob, the first person who accepted him. He recognizes Mob's traits that he used to view as weaknesses as strengths, and he remarks on how much Mob has grown up. Then Dimple sacrifices himself to save Mob and the city, while also protecting Mob's feelings. And that's the story of how Dimple made us all cry. I didn't see that one coming. Now let's get into Chapter 100. This is the climactic chapter of Mob Psycho 100, and it's where the primary conflict is resolved. It's the return of ... something that has been mysterious since the beginning. In this chapter, Mob confronts his power, literally, and finally accepts that side of himself. This self-acceptance, however, only comes after he faces a variety of other characters. This chapter brings back several former antagonists, showing how they have changed as a result of Mob. Teru and Mob face off again, Mob gets maybe a little bit of revenge, and Teru tries his best to hold him back and protect bystanders. Teru recognizes that underneath it all, it's still Mob, scared and helpless. But Mob doesn't see it this way, saying, "You don't have to think of that as me." Sakurai and Koyama are back, living their lives as commoners now, and trying to protect their store. Suzuki and Sho are back. Suzuki says at first that he's fighting Mob in order to repay a debt. Ultimately, Suzuki decides not to sacrifice himself. He admits that he is not as strong as Mob and decides to run away with Sho. He says that the most important thing is to live a normal life. Whereas a more straightforward redemption arc might have Suzuki, the big villain, sacrifice himself at this point, Mob Psycho subverts this expectation. Suzuki redeems himself by setting aside his pride and not relying on his powers, instead relying on his son as he limps away. Ritsu confronts his brother's power, the thing that has always terrified him most. He says he was traumatized by the incident when they were children, something he has never admitted, instead always pretending that he was fine for Mob's sake. And he recognizes that Mob was traumatized by it as well. Now, facing Mob's power, he says it's not something scary, it's just another part of Nissan. Mob doesn't believe this to be true, and tells Ritsu to stay back from that, referring to his power as something distinct from himself. Ritsu says, this is another Nissan, one that has been repressed. He recognizes the link between his brother's power and his emotions, shown by the fact that Mob became emotionally closed off following the incident. Ritsu considers getting himself injured in an attempt to wake Mob up. He thinks that this is all he has to offer, his only role in the narrative. But then he realizes that he is more than his brother's traumatic backstory. He decides to try to fight Mob using his own power, as his equal. When Ritsu reaches his own 100%, he says, "I'll become a brother you can earnestly compete with. I understand now. I was seeking power for the sake of this moment." Following the Ritsu scene, Mob confronts his power. This can also be referred to as ... or as Shigeo. But no matter what we call it, this is essentially a separate personality that has been formed through years of repression. It's a coping mechanism to separate Mob from the part of himself that he fears. Mob and Shigeo's mutual resentment is evident in this scene. Mob sees Shigeo as selfish and destructive, and Shigeo sees Mob as self-denying and weak. Shigeo says that Mob separated himself from his power because he didn't want to be held accountable for hurting people. This is a difficult thing to come to terms with. Even though Mob didn't intend to hurt Ritsu, the fact remains that he did. Mob expresses the fear that has driven him this entire time. If this form is the real me, no one will ever come near me. It's also revealed during this chapter that Shigeo likes Tsubomi because she was the only one who has treated him as a whole person. She didn't see me and Mob as separate. But that person is different. Now, at long last, we get to talk about Reigen. Reigen has spent all of Mob Psycho lying to and using Mob by his own admission. Even if Mob knows he's a fraud, and even if Reigen knows that he knows, Reigen still needs to tell him. That's really the only thing that can redeem him. ... sees Reigen as someone who has used him for his powers, and doesn't care about Mob as a whole person. He thinks now that Reigen knows who Mob really is, knows the full extent of his dangerous powers, that he will reject him. Look, that astonished face. He won't come any closer. Mob thinks that because of his powers, he will inevitably push away every person in his life. But Reagan is not so easily deterred. All this time, Mob has held two distinct opinions of Reagan that he has struggled to reconcile. His repressed, pessimistic view of Reagan is revealed in this chapter, when Shigeo says, "That person is only trying to use me." Mob argues, "I can trust Master Reagan." When Reagan confesses to him, these two sides of Reagan, as Mob sees them, collide, and Mob finally sees him as a whole person. Reagan reveals that he and Mob are not so different after all. Even though Reagan doesn't have powers, he also hates what he sees as his hidden true self. He tells Mob that his true identity is a fraud and a liar, contradicting Mob's earlier statement that his true identity is a good person. Reagan expects Mob to reject him. They both think that this is the end of their relationship, now that they are revealing their true selves. Reagan puts into words the thoughts that Mob has been struggling with. It's not like you alone are special. Anyone can have two sides of them. Everyone is the same as you, including me. Because I had lies, I was able to get to know you, and Mob, because you had that power, you are who you are right now. Reagan and Mob can't separate their flaws from who they are, and without their hidden true selves, they would not have met each other. After Reagan accepts this side of himself, he urges Mob to do the same. So the point is, you're fine the way you are. Even without me, you'll be okay. When the time is right, accept it. Accept yourself. Following this, Mob's power says to him, "What, so you're going to accept me?" And Mob says, "I want you to accept me as well, the way everyone else has." This self-acceptance is mutual. We see a panel of Ritsu injured again, to drive home the point that this incident was the start of all of this split between Mob and Shigeo, Mob and his power. Let's go back to how we were back then. Mob reaches for his own hand. He realizes that he will be okay, even if Tsubomi rejects him. Mob handles the rejection from Tsubomi like a champ because he no longer feels like she is the only person in the world who accepts his complete self. He knows now that Ritsu and Reagan and his other friends and even his enemies all recognize him as a whole person, but most importantly, he's finally able to see himself this way. Throughout this story, Mob has shown seemingly endless compassion to everyone else in his life, forgiving them for much worse things, but he struggles to extend the same compassion and forgiveness to himself. He believes that if the people in his life saw his true self, that they would be afraid of him and reject him. But his friends bravely face him with the same love and acceptance that he has shown them. In chapter 58 of the manga, season 2, episode 3 of the anime, Mob wonders what would happen if he turned his power against the world. Would there be anyone to stop him? Could anyone stop him? Chapter 100 brings his worst fears to life. But because of the positive impact Mob has had on the lives around him, there are plenty of people prepared to stop him from doing something he'll regret. We don't see much of Mob post-Chapter 100, but from what we do see in the epilogue, it's clear that he is not suffering under a huge mountain of guilt for basically destroying the entire city and hurting his friends. There's no way Season 1 Mob would have been able to cope with that. In the epilogue, Mob further demonstrates his new comfort with expressing emotions. Whereas in Chapter 100, he breaks down and cries, in Chapter 101, he laughs openly. The major themes of Mob Psycho are linked in such a way that it's hard to separate them. As Mob grows up, he learns to express and feel his emotions. He comes to terms with his powers, and he learns to forgive and accept himself. These developments all happen simultaneously, as part of Mob's coming-of-age story. However, the theme of redemption and forgiveness is most consistently reinforced by the plot and characters. Redemption arcs are a topic of debate among audiences, with many viewers questioning whether bad characters deserve redemption. Many fans of Mob Psycho take issue with Suzuki Toichiro's arc in particular. But in Mob Psycho, the emphasis is not on the bad things that other characters do. The emphasis is always on the good in Mob's heart, and on his active choice to be good, and to forgive, even when it's not easy. Whether or not these characters deserve redemption, the point is that Mob is able to find the compassion in himself to forgive them along his own journey of self-acceptance. Thank you so much for listening. I've been working on this for basically the entire time that Season 2 is airing, and it's been a fun little project to have, but I'm so glad to finally be able to share this, and also to be done working on it. I'll leave you with a little joke that I cut from the final version. Why don't you stop doing bad things?